Yeah. Notice to the public, if you wish to address the council, please complete the public wishing to address the council form located on either end of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All public comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words or actions, and comments shall be limited to the issue and cannot involve individuals or staff-related matters. All cell phones, pagers, and electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the duration of the meeting. I will be doing the invocation and the pledge. If everyone would please rise. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and we ask for your favor and your protection with the storms that are projected to be coming over us this week, Lord. Keep all the flooding down, Lord. Keep the rainfall as low as we can have it, Lord. Let your blessings be upon all the people of Terrebonne Parish. And, Lord, we ask for your wisdom and guidance as we consider the matters that are before us this evening, that we can do all things that would bring glory to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the meeting of the Public Services Committee of May 23rd, 2022 to order. Mr. Hampton, can we have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Amade.
Here.
Mrs. Domain.
Here.
Mr. Darren Guidry. Mr. Babin. Mr. Dirk Guidry. Mr. Trosclair. Mr. Navy. Mr. Harding. Mr. Michel. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. I have a letter from Mr. John Navy, Councilman of District 1. Please be advised that I may be tardy for tonight's committee meetings due to a school-related matter. I've reviewed the agendas and have made known my concerns. I apologize for any inconvenience my tardiness may cause. Thank you. And that is totally understandable as we're still in the platooning system and Ellender has the late show. Item number 1, discussion and update from the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness relative to COVID-19 and any other pertinent public information. Mr. Hughes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of council. Earl Hughes, Officer of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness, 101 Government Street in Gray. The COVID report for this week, total number of cases since the beginning of the COVID pandemic here in Terrebonne, 31,152. We had 32 cases today. That's an average of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so about 10 cases per day. Number of cases last week were 94, and the number of cases 2 weeks ago was 36. Number of reinfections today was 7. Number of reinfections last week was 4, and the number of reinfections 2 weeks ago was 3. Current number of deaths is 344. We haven't had any deaths last week or any in the last 2 weeks. Total number of tests is 271,793 since the pandemic began. Total number of tests last week was 879. 2 weeks ago, there were 1,337 COVID tests conducted clinically. Percent positivity for this week is 5.7%. Last week it was 5.5%. 2 weeks ago it was 3%. Even though we've had a rise in the positivity rate, the state is still considering us being the infection rate in Terrebonne Parish is low in our community. Number of hospitalizations today is 2. Last week we averaged about 1.5 patients. We can just call that 2. And the average 2 weeks ago was 1. Number of persons hospitalized that are non-vaccinated is down to 67%. Total number of persons vaccinated in Terrebonne Parish percentage-wise is 43.93. Total number vaccinated within the whole parish is 49,454 people. Total vaccinated last week was 66, and the total vaccinated 2 weeks ago was 74. So we are seeing a little uptick in the number of cases in the parish and also in the reinfections. But you know, the state's is still considering us as low throughout the community risk of low. We have seen a small increase in the percent positivity. So, but the good thing is the hospitalizations are staying low, between 1 to 2 patients per week at the hospital. So as long as the hospitalization numbers stay low, I think the state and through their CDC formula will keep our community in the low range as far as infections go. Any questions on COVID?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I have the floor, I'd like to say something about the upcoming hurricane season.
Yes, sir, please.
So in 2 weeks, June 1st starts the 2022 hurricane season. The predictions have been high through the National Hurricane Center and Colorado State University that we would have an above-average season this year. So I would like to make sure that residents understand that they should have a plan for evacuation, especially those that are living in FEMA or state travel trailers or modular home units. They should have a plan on what they're going to do for evacuation and where they're going to go. We will provide sheltering for those residents in those temporary housing units for a tropical storm, Category 1 and 2 storm within the parish or to an adjoining parish. And if we do get a major storm, such as a Cat 3, 4, or 5, that we will be evacuating everybody up to Monroe. And then if we need additional space outside of Monroe, the state of Louisiana will provide us with additional sheltering space in North Louisiana. But it is a good time for residents to look over their plan, start getting their kits together in case they have to evacuate, and we'll be pushing out additional information within the next couple of weeks for the public to get some information on what they need to do in the case we call for an evacuation.
Ms. Domingue?
Yeah, thank you very much, Earl. And
Yes, ma'am.
we're seeing a lot of anxiety coming with this hurricane coming up. I'm not gonna lie, I've got a little anxiety as well regarding the upcoming hurricane season. And that was gonna be my question: is if we're gonna put something out on social media saying exactly what would happen if we would have a tropical storm or a storm. So I appreciate you guys doing that, because I find when we push those things out, a lot of people are able to get that information. So I do appreciate that, and just hope that and pray that we don't have any storms this year. So thank you very much.
And with that, there is, every time they're going to mention there's something development in the Gulf of Mexico, it does produce a lot of anxiety. But if you have a plan and you know what you're going to do in the event that we call for an evacuation, you can limit some of your anxiety. So it's a good time to do that now, and to talk to your children also, because when they see you get anxious, they become anxious also and have anxiety. So if you work with your children and explain to them that we have a place to go in the event that a storm comes, then that'll be good for them also.
Mr. Michaud?
Good evening. She brings up a good point about social media, but my point is, how else are we putting out information besides social media and besides HTV? And I mean, are we doing something else to reach out to the people who don't do social media, the few and the wonderful?
Yeah, we have done some interviews with the newspaper, and we'll continue to do that as hurricane season comes upon us June 1st. We'll get more interviews from the newspapers wanting information, and we'll push information on out. But a lot of it does go out through social media. TPTV will have some things on there so they can see. And then that's pretty much through social media, and broadcast media is pretty much the only way to get the information out. If you have some examples or some suggestions, we'll be glad to take those.
Is it feasible to do a mail out?
It's very costly to do mail-outs, and I don't know. It has shown that when that type of mail comes through the mail, it goes into the circular file. So, but I mean, we reach a lot of people on a daily basis on social media. I think we reach more people on social media than they have subscriptions to the paper. So with that, I think we're hitting a lot more people than just through the news media.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Charles Clare?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got two questions. I think the first one probably directed at Chris. Chris, how many people are estimated to be living in temporary sheltering right now? Housing.
Given the number of units that deployed, FEMA and the state, it's a little over 9,000
Okay. So we got
people.
around 9,000 people that are in temporary trailers, mobile, these modular homes or whatever they're putting out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Earl, you said we're gonna be, for a 1, 2, or 3 storm, or 1 or 2, and tropical will be housing in the parish or neighboring parishes. Or y'all planning for like 9,000 people? I know we can't got 9,000 places in Terrebonne Parish.
I'm planning on 6,500 to 7,000. I'm hoping 25% of those residents will find family or friends to ride out a tropical storm with. So the plan is between 65 and 7,000, and we do have the accommodations for that.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask you the neighboring parishes, but most of our neighboring parishes are pretty much in the same shape we in, so I don't know where you going to a neighboring parish.
So
I mean, I don't need any details now, because I'm sure you're still working on them, but
yes, but I have
as
capacity.
long as we can accommodate the people, my mission is to make sure we can accommodate the people
And
that are living in these trailers.
the plan is to shelter these people for 24 to 36 hours until the tropical storm force winds are below 35 miles an hour, so they can get back to their trailers and their temporary housing. In the event that their home or temporary trailer is damaged and they can't go back and reside in it, we have a plan for that also.
Okay,
So-
thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Dirk Gidry.
Yeah, this is for Chris. Chris, do y'all know that the TPTV on charter is not working?
No,
I didn't know that.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Bowden.
Along the lines of putting it on television, given the fact that Terrebonne Parish was hit so hard from Ida, if we reached out to Channel 4, Channel 6, and Channel 8, where I think more people would see it, is that something that's feasible? I think they would, I really think that they would probably put a segment on there about what you're talking about.
So with that, they've already contacted us to do
Okay.
interviews. So in fact, Chris had one today on
Okay.
Channel 4. So with that, every time we get a chance, we're letting people know to please be prepared to evacuate in the event that
I mean, I
we
figure
have
you are,
a storm.
okay, but I mean,
So-
I would think that those television stations would give us that courtesy
Yes,
as a
sir.
parish, because we were so heavily hit from the last storm.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We're trying to take every opportunity we can.
okay, and before I get off, I have a question for, Chris. Councilman Guidry and I were talking earlier, it seems like some people are starting to get some notices from FEMA and/or the state to start paying for the trailers that they're in. Can you give us a update on that?
well, that sounds very suspicious to me. So I would say that if anybody gets a letter from anyone requiring payment or rent or lease of the temporary housing unit that you've been issued, to please send a copy of that to us.
Okay.
They can send it to, my email. They can send it to you guys. I mean, however you want to however they need to get it to us. My email's cpulaski@tpcg.org. But if we get a copy of that, we can get that to the FEMA personnel that we have in our office, and they can verify what that is or if it's fake.
You haven't heard of any of this
No, sir,
yet?
I have not
Okay.
heard of that.
All right. Well, let's hope that's it's a scam and nobody falls for it.
Right?
Thank you.
Certainly don't pay it until you get it sent in and get it cleared.
Yeah, especially since FEMA said it's an 18-month program with the possibility of extension as the need exists.
Correct.
So, all right, Mr. Harding.
Yes, I think everyone has a concern how to get it out there to the citizens of Terrebonne Parish. But, I mean, we're living in an area that we should be conscious of some of those things happening. And this last storm actually did something to us. But I can add on to the concerns of my colleagues is the fact that we do supply services such as utilities, gas, and things like that. If we can actually just put friendly reminders like that on the services we provide, and they're going to interact that way. So if we can actually use that method to do that, that's something that goes to their houses, So, thank you.
Mr. Michel.
Yeah, just one other question, storm related. The malfunction that we had with the floodgate for the Ida, has that been repaired, or is that in the process of being repaired?
It's my understanding it's gonna be back in place and working like it was pre-Ida before hurricane season.
And what
So
about?
that's June 1st.
And what about correcting it?
I think that's gonna take a little while longer to do, but I know the levy district is doing everything they can right now to find out a remedy
Okay.
on those issues.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
No more questions on that. We're doing a FEMA update, Chris?
Sure. Yes, sir. So for the Ida sheltering program, this is the state's program. We have 2,214 units have been deployed in Terrebonne, and just over 2,044 have been leased in, so that are occupied. I'm also happy to report we're starting to see what the state calls transitions, but what we would call moving out. 144 people have moved out and told the state we're no longer in need of the temporary shelter. Now, unfortunately, some of those are probably due to the fact that they may have left Terrebonne Parish, but you know, I think the bulk of them are folks who have made repairs to their homes. As far as FEMA goes, we have 1,452 folks have been approved for direct housing on a private site, and that number will continue to increase as time goes on, because they've interviewed over 3,000 people. So that number is going to keep climbing. To date, they've licensed in 1,006 units on private sites. We have 196 units in commercial parks, that's existing mobile home parks. We have 49 at the Gage Court group site, and then we have a little over, almost 350 between the three other group sites that are currently in various stages of development. And all three, one's set to open at the end of June, and the other two will be opening sometime in mid to late August. And we have to date 21 move-outs in FEMA units. Those are the numbers.
Do we know what Gage Court's housing right now?
49.
So they're full.
They've begun licensing in, right.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how many they have occupied, but they have 49 sites there.
Yeah, because
so.
I keep getting, because the other three are in me and Carly's districts, and everybody's like, well, why they need to build those if they're not if they're not filling those? And people just don't see that there's still a lot of people staying with family, out of town, hotels probably.
Yeah, we're estimating that roughly there are about 400, maybe close to 500 households in Terrebonne that are waiting for that FEMA direct housing program to kick in.
Right. Mr. Harding?
It's part of the conversation they had with Earl, and it brings to my attention, said, well, to ask the question, how long, out of these 140-some people that actually said they no longer need the trailers, how long does it take for those trailers to be removed? Because we had hookups and transferring this, that, and the other.
I don't have a time frame yet, but today I did meet with one of the FEMA reps, and we've requested that they notify us every time a unit is moved out and decommissioned, so that we can get into our system and close it out. But part of that will also include when it gets hauled off.
Yeah, and we got different agencies such as Interg to help in the process of breaking down these trailers too. I just want to put that out there. And so secondly is the fact that, I think there was previously a question asked about some perhaps scam or whatever for $1,400 for these trailers. And then if they have been turned in like that, what have they done with them if you have them? They haven't, person had a trailer. I no longer need it. If that trailer has been removed, what happened in the process after the trailer was removed? Was it taken somewhere else? Were they offered the opportunity to buy it or whatever?
To my knowledge, they haven't offered the purchase, and I'm not sure if that possibility or option is going to even be available. But what they are doing is they're taking them to a staging area outside of Terrebonne. They assess them, and if they can make repairs to them, and clean them out and everything, then they can get them back into the program so they're not waiting on a new unit. If they can refurbish it and then deliver it back to somebody else who's still waiting for a trailer, they'll do that.
Yeah, so that supports that, you know, man, don't fall for the $1,400 thing. It goes back to what we're saying over here. So that is part of the system. So everyone that's out there that's listening to Chris, don't fall for the $1,400.
Yeah, certainly don't write a check until we have a chance to check it out.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Michaud.
Is there any, has Entergy been providing us with the routine updates that they said that they would, to see where they are as far as percentage of street lights that are back on, and are they where they need to be, and are they still expecting to be finished with virtually all the repairs by the end of June like they originally said?
I haven't received any of those updates, but I don't think I was set to, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Point of just a very informational piece. I spoke with Entergy today,
I'm sorry.
and I asked our representative that very same question, and I am told, no, they are not on schedule for the end of June. And the reason she gave was supply chain issues. And what I asked her today is, can you give us something in writing of a new date that you anticipate all of them? And she says she will prepare that and send it to all the council members. I spoke to her just today about that, Mr. Michaud.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Ms. Domingue.
Thank you very much. Has anybody had their houses demoed with the FEMA demolition program? Has that program
yet.
started yet? Do we have a timeline on that?
No. We met today with some of our consultants to work on that. I would hope that in a couple of, maybe the next council meeting, we'll have an update of when that's gonna start. We have taken applications. We have the citizens who are gonna volunteer to have their house demoed. We have started the process of getting GOSEP and FEMA and all of them involved and approving those applications. So I think in about 2 weeks, we'll have a better idea of when that could possibly start.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't know why everybody looks at you when it's a money thing. All right, I have no more questions. Mr. Hughes, Mr. Pulaski, thank you for the updates. Item 2, Mr. Michaud makes a motion to discuss with possible action regarding fireworks in Terrebonne Parish and their proximity to residential structures. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Domingue. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Michaud, you may discuss.
Okay. So we passed the fireworks ordinance, and we have some people who are not pleased with the outcome of that ordinance. And my question basically is, can certain subdivisions be eliminated from that ordinance where fireworks will not be allowed? But really, my question, and I'm, that's a question that's been posed to me, but my question is, do we have the proximity to residential dwellings large enough on that ordinance? Has anybody else had any concerns or problems with that? I can certainly see where that could be an issue for some people. Especially at such a time where we have the blue roofs on the house and not the regular shingles. But in any event, should we be discussing the possibility of making the proximity to residential structures greater than it is now?
Mr. Hebert, on Mr. Michaud's question, with your reviewing of the current ordinances, and I know the sheriff was the one that was moving a lot of this along. I don't know exactly how much of your involvement would, but are you aware of any of proximity issues in the discussions and creation of the ordinance?
As I recall, I'd have to go back and look at the minutes. That's been, Lord, 2-3 years ago we addressed that. 2 years ago, I think, when it came up. But I think we were at the time, I believe we were holding the meetings at the Civic Center when it came up. And if my memory serves me correctly, the issues came up about the fireworks and the proximity, especially in the city areas about it, but, so I think that matter was discussed. And of course, it's just not, obviously, you got rural areas that have subdivisions, so I'm not trying to limit it just to the city, but I just remember that there were issues that came up. Obviously, if you're gonna have fireworks, if you have bottle rockets and stuff like that, I mean, depending
Yeah.
on what type of fireworks you're using.
Yeah, I know a lot of times when whoever is promoting and looking into something of the such, they kind of look at what other communities are doing and
Let me tell you what I mean. I think the thing would be is that we would, to answer Councilman Michel's question, if it really wants to be addressed, is I think that matter should be addressed. If there's gonna be a complaint about it, it'll probably go on through, made to, the police departments, the sheriff's office and/or the Houma Police Department. And, if asked by the council, I can, go and try and solicit that information and report back to the council, how many complaints that they've had about issues with fireworks concerning, rooftops, things like that. I mean,
Okay, and that's part of the concern. The other concern, of course, is that there are a certain number of people in the parish who are suffering from PTSD, and you know, any number of reasons. It's not necessarily just the risk of fire, but you know, we chose in our ordinance to protect, and I use that word, to protect the city of Houma. But there are other places that I mean, why wouldn't they be protected as well? And my district outside the city of Houma is probably the area with the most subdivisions. Well, I don't know, maybe Mr. Guidry as well.
I mean, fireworks are allowed to be used very limited. As I recall, there was some, information even brought up about, statistics on that and things. So I think it was pretty well vetted.
But
And not everybody is going to agree.
the concern is that they don't just do it for the few hours. I mean, I see that at my home. And I don't know how enforceable that is.
That's a law enforcement issue.
Yeah, but I mean, it is. But it's a law enforcement issue that we put out there by passing the ordinance. Is it? So that being said, is it? Am I allowed to tender my light to Mr. Bergeron for 3 minutes?
no, sir.
Is it?
If
Did
I
you put a
remember right,
speaker
Mr.
cord
Abraham? No, sir. From what I understand from Robert's rules, we can't give our lights to anyone.
No, you can't give your light to him. He's not.
What Mr. Guidry told me.
Mr. Who?
Chair.
He's not a member of the assembly, so you can't give your light to a non-member of the assembly. But
He would have had to fill out a speaker
well,
card.
yeah, but
Am I
what you
correct?
can do is if he filled out a speaker card, he can speak on
Yeah.
that issue.
And he hasn't, so
Well, consider it filled out.
it would have had to have been filled out before the start of the meeting.
That's not what Mr. Guidry told me this morning. You all
I-
was on the agenda.
And I'll say this:
And
whatever the accuracy it is. But Mr. Floyd was waiting outside for me and said he was told he could not speak. That's why he didn't fill out a speaker card. So I think we should offer him the latitude of allowing him to fill out a speaker card
Well, there's
and
no
speak
action.
for 3 minutes.
First of all, there's no action being taken, so there's nothing to discuss. It's just a discussion. It has motion and possible action. I mean, it was a motion and it was brought up to discuss. But there's nothing in the form of action. If the assembly was to vote on an action to be taken, then you would have to allow the public to speak before you take any action. But there's no action to be taken. There's no ordinance before the assembly. So absent that, he would have to have filled out a speaker card. Without a speaker card, he can't speak.
that's
So-
how I understood it. I mean, I don't have a problem with people speaking. It's just the procedures are there to be followed.
Nobody comes up here to speak. You'll always complain the public doesn't come in, nobody comes up,
All right,
Point of order.
Mr. Babin?
Yeah, Gerald alluded to something just a minute ago about the blue roofs all over the parish. Is that something that we could take a look at in this particular ordinance for this 4th of July? I mean, it's only the 4th of July and New Year's that we pop firecrackers, correct? I mean, that are allowed to pop them.
That is
All right.
correct.
Throughout the entire parish, where we can pop firecrackers right now, and Gerald's right, the area that he represents is outside the city limits, but a very densely populated area, and some of the others are that way also. Is it something that we need to take a look at as a parish and our ordinance to say, this year, because of the storm, it may be something that we want to take a look at? I'm asking Mr. Hebert.
Mr. Chair, again, I have offered, if somebody makes the motion,
I'll make that motion right now.
okay, I will go to the police department, the sheriff's department. I will reach out to the fire department and all the fire departments and ask them how many problems that they have, any with blue tarps or any tarps. Now, just remember, let me remind you something. Since that hurricane, we went through New Year's, and there was a lot of, there was a lot of fireworks that were blown for New Year's, and I don't know of any complaints that were had because of blue tarps. And I think if it would have happened, we would have likely have heard about it. But with that said, if you want detail, I can reach out to all the volunteer fire departments. I can reach out. In fact, what I'm going to do is I know how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to reach out to our chief, and then I'm going to ask our chief to go to the volunteer fire departments and ask him. I'm going to get with the police chief, and I'm going to get with the sheriff and his attorney, and I'm going to ask them, that the council is requesting. There's a motion being made on the floor. It's not seconded yet, but there's a motion as to the amount of complaints that have been lodged against fireworks, and if they can put together something for us to tell us.
All right, I'll make that motion.
And is that strictly limited to rooftops, or is that limited
No,
to
I would say-
noise?
I would say all complaints having to deal with fireworks.
Second.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Wait, I'm still
All
on
right,
my
so,
way.
so
Okay.
anyway, before we go on, since we have a motion on the floor and I have a second by Mr. Michel, all in favor? Any opposed?
Now he can speak. Where is he? Before you vote.
He got mad and left, but,
Wait, I just want to address one thing that you said, and you're correct. We don't know how many complaints we had at New Year's, okay? I think after the storm, a lot of people were probably just wanting to do something different, pop firecrackers. And it was probably 50 degrees at the most then. In July of this year, it's going to be 90 degrees when we pop in firecrackers. So I think that makes a big difference in terms of, I'm not a fireman.
It rains a lot,
I'm not trying to say
too.
I'm a fireman. I'm just telling you, it could possibly be, all right? So if you go along with the motion tonight and do what you said, then it'll give us the information that we need to make a decision.
Right, as to whether or not the ordinance
Correct,
needs to be
correct.
tweaked. No,
Thank
okay. And I'll also try and look at state statistics and maybe contact the state fire marshal and see if there's any other areas of having complaints. Okay.
Mr. Darren Guidry?
Yeah, and Jules, they have this type of information. I know they give it to the neighborhood watch groups as far as the calls that they get. It would be.
Who's they?
I know HPD does.
Okay.
HPD has that type of information they give to the neighborhood watch groups. The sheriff doesn't have neighborhood watch. They have a different thing, community watch. But if we can get it, if it's possible not only to get the issues that they have, but if we could get it by any regions, I know they probably couldn't pull it as subdivisions, but just areas like in the Broadmoor area or in the Sugarwood area or, the Patriot Point area.
Well, I can ask that.
Because we may have, I don't get a whole lot of complaints. Sugarwood is my biggest subdivision outside the city, that the homes are in somewhat closer together. And I haven't had a whole lot of complaints, but that doesn't mean that they haven't called the police, and so it would be
ask
good
the
for me to
question.
get that.
I can ask the question.
Great, thank you.
The answer can either be yes or no, so you got to give it a shot.
Mr. Harding?
Yes, a lot of this is based on perhaps Mr. Hebert is trying to inquire about in reference to the statistics. Also, that the rules that we make, and sometimes you can take people's life and property into consideration, like we may have droughts and times when we may have very, very dry land. So I think we don't have to take it off the books. We can actually let it maintain on the book and actually create an ordinance, something to say that, because of the safety factor, we can actually not allow it. You speak of the rural areas or outside the city limits. I live inside the city limits, and so we got just as much popping and firecrackers in my area also. So those one significant factor about all of this is policing. How do we handle the situation? Something that we have placed on the book, and we're having some people, some are for it, some are against it. The most important thing here is actually, number one, we look at our emergency response people, check out their statistical data, and then we actually also have to find out how we actually police this, because again, I live in the city, and like the gentleman that was in the public, I think that's his concern. I think also what Mr. Michel is saying, that's their concerns about some of the constituents. So even though my colleagues may individually differ slightly, I think the most important thing that we must look at is, number one, is the safety of the people and their property, looking at the statistics of it, and we find out what we have on the books. We got to be able to police that. I think we need to support them somehow. That's important to me, because you're not going to catch them. You're not going to catch them. So, thank you.
Mr. Michaud.
And just one other little thing is, when we're checking on these complaints, we need to include the emergency rooms for injuries that might have occurred.
Well, I thought.
The lights on.
I'm on.
Yes.
I did think about that, Gerald, but something else came to my mind is privacy. I don't know.
They'll give you
unless-
statistics. They won't give you
Yeah,
names, obviously.
But I will write I'll contact the attorney for the hospital service district and see if they keep generic statistics.
Yeah,
on
and
that.
they will.
And that may be turned over to the state. I will say that I believe that if we had some grave problem with fireworks, we would have heard about it more. I can only recall one person coming up here and complaining about it. Nothing wrong, that's it. That person's right. But other than that, there's many items in life that we have problems with, but I will run it down. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's always good when we institute something new that within about 3 years period, we kind of reassess it and see. I think what Mr. Pulaski and all did with getting all that information into the distributors, the sales temps and stuff, I think people were starting to realize that the times were limited. And I know that in this past holiday season, I noticed a difference in that. They went from popping the whole week to popping just those days. Probably not within the time frames, but at least on the days. So seeing nothing further, we'll move on to item 3. Mr. Michel makes a motion to discuss with possible action regarding nuisance abatement procedures and operations. Do I have a second? Mr. Harding makes a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Michel, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. My concern, of course, since COVID and Ida, we've had to kind of curtail some of the things that have been done in nuisance abatement, and they've gotten to the point where up until recently, they've only really addressed tall grass issues, and there have been some ongoing issues that have been from before Ida. But given our conversation, there's also the COVID aspect of it. But specifically trash and dilapidated properties, and so I'd like an update on what the process is for getting us back to normal. And one thing that I wanted to add to our earlier discussion, and I think you're going to speak of the earlier discussion, is there's the places with trash. The old furniture place store, I think, is closed now on the corner of Idlewild and Park. There's people have just been dumping behind there for some reason. And so, you know, in situations like that, now, one of the problems that we've had forever and ever has gone away. So I don't know if y'all did something about that. I'm not gonna say the address since the problem's gone away. I don't know if y'all did something about that, or if the family took it upon themselves to get the situation fixed. But anyway, we're grateful for that in Broadmoor. So anyway, if you could address that, I would appreciate that.
So yes, as many of you I'm sure are aware, it's been some time since we've had any condemnation hearings, and that was largely due to COVID. We were not able to have public hearings, and as part of the procedures, which are largely based off of state law as well, there's a procedure that has to happen, and it's really geared in the favor of the homeowner, which is as it should be, to protect people's property rights. And public hearings is part of that. So we had to hit the pause button because of COVID, and then we were just getting started when Ida came along. So we pulled all of our nuisance abatement staff, and we had them doing storm recovery and response work. And so now in the spring, they were transitioning back into it, and now they're back on task as far as tall grass, junk and trash, and condemnation. So we have, in July, will be the next public hearing, and they're quarterly, is how we've traditionally done it. And there are 16 properties on the July hearing, but these go back to before COVID. So it's gonna take us a while to get caught up. But if y'all remember, this fiscal year, you approved as part of the budget, the ability for us to increase that division, the personnel in that division, to increase the capacity and the amount of cases that they're able to handle, because we were seeing the numbers creeping up long before COVID. So that process is happening. We've got a new person who's starting this week. We've got 2 openings in that division right now. So if anybody knows of anyone who's looking for a job, one's clerical, one's an office position, and one's a field inspector. We also have on the next agenda approval for a vehicle purchase. So we're trying to build that capacity, and I'm going to be talking with Dion Stewart, the assistant director of that division, to see if we can't, once the additional staff is online and trained up, if we can look to stagger, and so maybe we're not having them quarterly, we can have them more on a regular basis because we have more people to do it. We wouldn't be able to do that with the current staff, but thanks to y'all and administration, we were able to increase the number of people. We just got to hope that people apply for those jobs. So, does that answer your question?
And yes, it does. And we also talked a little bit about the specific problems on Grace Street.
Yes, sir. So my recollection, one of the properties was a burned home, and then there's a couple others on the same parcel, but multiple structures. So this week, Dion and I will go take a look at that, because we've seen it in other locations where something may have come into the system as a derelict structure, but once the inspection is made, well, gosh, this is just, not even a structure. It's just a pile of debris. So at that point, we don't even need to bother with the condemnation proceedings. We can move it over into junk and trash, and it's a lot sooner. Yeah.
Okay, and for the clerical position and the field inspector position, are those listed online currently?
Yes, sir. tpcg.org.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dirk Gidger.
Yeah, one quick thing, Chris. When y'all gonna come up with this condemnation list, are y'all gonna go ahead and y'all gonna come back and match that list you have with the homes that's put in for them being demolished?
Actually, we talked about that at our meeting with the consultants this afternoon. Yes, we're gonna all of the properties that we have on the condemnation, we're gonna be tracking that. So if we can identify one on the condemnation, we can reach out to them and say, hey, look, rather than go through this whole process, if we've got a willing property owner or owners, we could offer up that Fema program, and we don't even have to fool with the condemnation.
Okay, good. That was my next question going to you, if you can do that. If the houses are gonna be up to be condemned, could you notify them that there is a program to get them tore down at this time?
Definitely.
And I see another growing problem where they got these houses that do need to be torn down, and they junked in the yards, that we're getting 6 and 7 foot tall grass in these yards too. So, I mean, it's not just the buildings that need to be torn down, we're starting to have a problem with vegetation, so,
Yeah, we're just now getting into the peak of grass season, so,
yeah, so. All right, Chris, that's what I was wondering. Thank you, man.
sure.
Mr. Darren Gidger?
Yeah, Chris, and when, as part of the demolition program, if it's multiple owners in an estate, can you get 50% of the people to agree to it and have the demolition program demolish it, or does it have to go through condemnation?
Well, I don't know how the FEMA program, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's, you have to have a majority of the owners or 100% of all owners. So that would be an instance where if it has to be 100% and then you've got a holdout,
Then they have
Then
no
it-
case but
then it
going
might
through
have to go to
condemnation.
condemnation.
Yeah.
Mr. Abear, you have something to add to that?
No, well, I had an idea, but somebody wants to hear it.
I want to hear it.
Your light's on, Drew, when the red light's on.
I think, okay, that's a little complex.
Old
for
habit.
me.
6.5 years.
What I think maybe we should consider doing is, Chris and Candace, is working with the ad hoc attorneys that are appointed and let them handle the people we cannot find and give them the alternative to say, look, potentially this property could be torn down at no cost to your clients and in lieu of going through the formal condemnation process, and let them make the decision and issue a letter to parish. But a lot of structures, as I think Chris is alluding to, and I think what Dirk's thinking, is, man, we have a lot of structures out there that could be done, that has to be done on a systematic, because you just can't, it costs so much to have them done. And another thing, this would likely prevent, per se, the leaning of their property, because I don't think the government is leaning the property to collect for it. So that's the thing that I was gonna say.
Well, if they're eligible, that's the thing, is what is the FEMA criteria to be deemed eligible for the demolition program? I mean, if they're deemed eligible, then there's no cost to the property owner.
And that's in the FEMA manual about this type of properties. What I'm saying is, the issue came up about the biggest problem that I see, both from having done them in the past on the other side and seeing on this side, is locating unidentified owners. You can't find them all. So that's why the ad hoc attorney is appointed to represent the unknown person. So that's how you would cover that basis. Now, the flip side of the matter is you brought up about, well, let's say you had 4 people and 3 said, yeah, let's go through the, we agree to the FEMA process, and the other one says, well, no, I want to rebuild. Okay, well, then I think at that time, that person should be advised to say, look, okay, you're going to be given, there's 2 things happen. We will rule you in the court, which we can under statute, and give you 6 months. You have 6 months to rebuild that house, which is one way to do it. The other way is we will condemn it, and we're gonna give you, as y'all done recently, that we've gone on, we condemn and give 90 days, and if it isn't done within 90 days, it goes through the condemnation process. That way we can stay on track with it, because at some point in time, FEMA's gonna say, the program shut off, correct, Chris? I mean,
Right, it'll end.
it'll end. So what I'm saying is, we need, the ones we can identify and move, the one that doesn't, we say, okay, that's fine. You got this many days to go get a contract, to sign a written contract, bring it to us, and show us you're gonna repair it. Other than that, it's condemned. And if it's condemned, then you run the risk that the parish will do it, but you're gonna wind up with the $8,000-9,000 bill, and that's gonna lien your property, and when you go to sell your property, you got to pay the parish. Whereas if you go the other route and consider the other route, you may not owe it. Okay? That's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harding?
Yes, sir. I'm for Terrebonne Parish and the people that's in it, in reference to a kink in the system, whereas, you know what I mean, we can take advantage of FEMA in this demolition process, okay? We had a list prior to the hurricane. We had a list prior to the hurricane, and it would be to those people fortune to take advantage of this particular thing that we have. Now, the demolition process that we're offering is not in place. So, like Mr. Guidry is saying, I've had people that I've encountered, they have ownership problems. So we have the legal aspects of it, whether you were on the list before, whether you were not on the list before. You have free demolition, then you have to have proof of ownership, and now we're saying that we're gonna actually start the process again in July. So say, for instance, that we've actually been telling everyone that we're having this demolition thing come up, and we may look forward to perhaps July. If we're not in place for the demolition, that might be the argument that some of these people that we're gonna bring in here with that in July, that we're gonna have to give them an opportunity because we haven't been set up yet. So I think that could be used in consideration also to actually, we're advertising something, but we need to let them know that, you know, you were here before.
Right.
And the process starting here, and we have pictures and things like that. Nothing against the people of Terrebonne Parish. It's just the fact that, you know, we have to do it fairly across the board, I do believe, and give them an opportunity with all fairness. That's all. I'm just trying to put it out there like that.
I asked a similar question of our consultants today, and I mean, there are going to be structures, obviously, that were blighted and damaged before Ida came along. And of course, I'm sure they didn't weather the storm very well.
Right.
But when FEMA looks at the application for each site, they go back through things like something as simple as Google Earth Street View. They'll go back and look and see what it looked like pre-storm. And if it was already uninhabitable at that time, they're probably not going to approve it for their program. Their program is targeted for the specifically for the structures that were made uninhabitable because of Ida.
And that's my point. I don't want everyone, and some people, to a certain extent, I may have actually, you know what I mean, put that out there like that, whereas, you know what I mean, take advantage of an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I also want them to know that there is a possibility that it might not be so. You know what I mean? And I want them to know what's in front of them before they can come up with not only with an argument, or they might be working on, waiting on certain opportunities where they can take advantage of that, and they're not going to have that advantage to them. So I think it could be.
Well, we have to be, if we put language in the letters that go out about what program, the demolition program that we have available, I think we need to be very clear on that if the damage was the result of Hurricane Ida, you know, this program may be to your advantage, but for pre-existing structures like that, it won't work.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Babin.
I think that program is going to be good for Terrebonne Parish. I just want to switch to the grass situation, and all I'm going to say is there's some high-profile property out there. It's got some pretty tall grass on it right now. Hopefully, the department can get out. One thing that always did bother me, if somebody called on a piece of property, and let's say it's in by Delorge that I represent, is at the end of the road and by Delorge, we have to pass up sometimes 10 and 15 places that the grass is just as bad, that we're going to take a look at the end of the road, and those aren't taken care of. I would hope that we could maybe change the system rather than it have to be just called in, that we as a government can say, hey, this grass is bad. We need to get this address and at least get a letter to these people. Because it's going to get out of hand. You know that. I mean, the time is coming right now, and there's a good bit already. So again, I know you're limited in the number of people that you have. Hopefully we can get some more people in and not let that get out of hand, because you know we as a council are going to start getting calls from people about state intersections, and it's not our fault that we can't do anything with it. But if it's parish property and or private property in the parish that we have the purview over, then we need to start taking a look at it.
Understood.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Mr. Darren Guidry.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if we can send a letter to the state for tall grass notice. But the demolition homes, is one of the requirements also too that it had been lived in by the individual, or
I'm not sure.
you're not sure if that, because it could be some homes that were perfectly fine, and, you know, just for whatever reason, you know, the person was not registered to live in there, and they would still qualify if that home was damaged and they own that home, but they happen to be, you know, staying in Lafayette for 6 months, or,
It's in the manual. If you Google the FEMA
Well-
manual, disaster manual, it's in there, gives you the requirements for demolishing homes that were.
I'm sorry, go ahead, about,
I'm sorry, I said it's in the FEMA disaster manual. They explain the whole program and what you gotta do to meet the requirements. No insurance coverage in there, okay? I mean, a lot of these structures, even if it was bad structures, suffered a lot of water damage, suffered a lot of wind damage, to where it may have been salvageable before and is not salvageable now. So, like Chris said, there may be some, but
so you're thinking the demolition program may be slightly different than the FEMA aid program, whereas the FEMA aid program, you had to be living in that structure at the time, that this demolition may be slightly. That's good to know if anybody is watching and concerned, you know, go ahead and apply for it. You know, even if you weren't living there, you know,
yeah, well, I mean,
it
suppose
doesn't
you
hurt.
had a camp or a trailer and it's demolished or something, I mean, I don't, anyway,
Well-
that's not a big thing to look at.
Thank you, that's good information.
Okay, seeing no more lights, we'll move to item 4, resolution authorizing amendment number 1, the GIS Engineering LLC agreement to provide professional services relative to semi-annual groundwater monitoring activities at the Ashland Sanitary Landfill located along Ashland Landfill Road, Houma, Louisiana, 70363, pertinent to solid waste permit number D-109-0127/P-004 in the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality Agency interest number 9413, and to provide for other related matters thereto. Move, Mr. Babin, second, Mr. Michel, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, resolution ratifying the appointment of the firm of David A. Waits Engineering and Surveying Incorporated to provide professional services for the TPCG roadways shoulder project and authorizing execution of an agreement for these services. Moved by Mr. Darren Guidry, second by Mr. Harding. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, we have a light. Sorry, Mr. Guidry.
Just to point out, one of the projects that this is going to help is the Savan Road area, which is very, very narrow, and we're having major issues with, and this will also help widen that, so welcome aboard, Mr. Waits. Thank you.
All right. Sorry I missed your light. We're trying to move on too fast, I guess. Item 6, resolution authorizing the execution of change order number 1 for the construction agreement for the Parish Project 19 BLD 30 American Legion Post 31 Building Phase 2 Abatement and Remediation, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. Moved by Mr. Dirk Guidry, second by Ms. Jessica Domingue. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, resolution ratifying the appointment of the firm Duplantis Design Group, PC, to provide professional services for the Houma Heights Park and authorizing the execution of an agreement for these services. Move, Ms. Domingue, second, Mr. Darren Guidry. All in favor? We have one light, Mr. Harding.
Yes, Ms. Candace, we were in a position with, is this Houma Heights Park over on the east side of town? Okay, and we were in a position with our budget, and that was something to do with $3 million. And then we had to have certain progress over there with the development of that.
No. So, I don't think so. The Houma Heights, we have, I think it's about 400,000 in the budget. The 3 million, I think, had to do with the Parkwood Place,
Okay.
the low-income housing.
Yeah, all right.
So it's not the Houma Heights.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, resolution concurring with the recommendation of administration approving the sole source proprietary purchase of 1 flight submersible pump rotating assembly replacement with 450 millimeter impeller for the Air Base Sewer Lift Station Pollution Control Division. Move Mr. Dirk Guidry, second Mr. Danny Babin. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion adjourned, Mr. Darren Guidry, second, Mr. Danny Babin. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Notice to the public, if you wish to address the council, please complete the public wishing to address the council form located on either side of the counter and give it to either the chairman or the council clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. All public comments must be addressed to the council as a whole. Addressing individual council members or staff is not allowed. Speakers should be courteous in their choice of words, and actions and comments shall be limited to the issues and cannot be involve individual or staff-related matters. Thank you. Also, all cell phone pages and electronic devices used for communication should be silenced for the duration of the meeting. I will now call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order, having an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Michel.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many gifts that you have for us and for helping us to walk one step at a time closer to a sense of normalcy following both Hurricane Ida and the coronavirus disaster that we've had over the last 2 years. And we ask you to keep in our hearts forefront that we're here not for ourselves, but for the people of Terrebonne Parish, and most of all, Lord, for you. We ask this in all things through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hampton, could you give us a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Amade? Here. Mrs. Domingue? Here. Mr. Darren Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Babin? Mr. Dirk Guidry? Mr. Trosclair? Mr. Navy? Mr. Harding? And Mr. Michel? Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum present.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to turn item number 1 over to the Vice Chair, Mr. John Amade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 1, Mr. Harding makes a motion to discuss with possible action regarding the status of allocation for crime cameras. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Michel. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Harding, you have the floor.
Yes, we had a representative from the police department, and I've actually had several conversations with the sheriff. And I just want to actually just put it to my colleagues to be more in depth about what position that we are in with this, perhaps as early as possible, that we can get the cameras throughout Terrebonne Parish, not just in my district, but then all of our districts. It would take some effort to actually protect the city and the rural areas outside the city limits, but then yet still they're all working together for one team throughout this region in the United States. So I asked Ms. Malden what would be some ideas for us to actually approach this, and how will we fund it. Either we can actually approach it in one way or the other way. Ms. Malden, you better at talking about finance than I do. I am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Harding. So we have been paying for the crime cameras out of our road lighting district funds. One recommendation I would give the council tonight is let me put together what's available in those funds, because some of them have excess, some of them don't. We would have to do budget amendments for some of them, so at least we would know what areas has funding and which ones don't, so we can kind of come up with a game plan. And for those that we don't have the extra funding for this year, we can prepare for it for next year. So that would be the first recommendation before we can really go out and start deciding where we're going to put them and how we're going to put them and when we're going to buy them. We need to know how we're going to pay for them. So I can go ahead and put together, based on the road lighting district funding, what we have there. We can even look at some of the grant money that the police department has received. The only problem with that is it would be within city limits. So we'd have to get the sheriff's office to try to do some grant requests for outside of the city. But I think we need to first find out what money we have and what we can work with, and then we can kind of come up with a plan for the crime cameras after that.
And I also made mention to her the possibility that I'm relaying to you guys is the fact that, if we have something that we can work with now, it's available and that does not cost any problem to any district that we actually have. We can actually implement some things, and then perhaps if the second part of that, our conversation was the fact that if we budget, we can actually slightly increase our budget for the city and the police department and sheriff's department. So we can actually assist them. I think we had something within my district, a certain amount of money, but also it would help out in the other districts that they have, that we can actually do something. To the next slide,
Mr. Michel?
Thank you. I can't help but wonder how many cameras we could have bought instead of usurping the sheriff's attempt to put out speed control devices at schools, and instead we put out these useless devices that are there, in my humble opinion. But what the other question that I'm wondering is on this these recreation districts. Is it possible? Can somebody bring that up at the task force meeting, that maybe they can fund something? Every camera we have up is going to get something that's not gotten before, and if we can protect our recreation assets with cameras, they may also be able to help with protecting the area around those assets. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Ms. Domingue?
Yeah, thank you. And I've been working with Bobby O'Brien to get several cameras in my area. But Mr. Harding, the big problem we're seeing is supply chain issues. And so there's actually one specific camera that was ordered about a year ago that still is on back order. And so while getting the funding, I think is really important, we also need to remember that's going to take a long time to get those cameras. So unless we can find a new vendor or something like that, but it's taking quite a long time to get anything electronic in, and so just something to think about.
Thank you, Ms. Domingue. Mr. Dirk Guidry?
Yes, can anybody tell me if these crime cameras that'll be in place on highways in crime-ridden areas, are they gonna have license plate readers on them? Because I know that I talked to the sheriff last week, and he's trying to start to get 25 cameras along our highways with license plate readers. And what it is Terrebonne and Lafourche, Assumption, St. Mary would all be on the same program, where they could tell where any kind of car that doing something illegally, they could follow this car from Lafourche, St. Mary, Terrebonne, wherever. So I think it would be a good idea, and we're moving into technology into the future. So I know a crime that was solved in Steve's district, a double homicide. That's how it was found by a record truck with a license plate reader that saw this one time, and they followed this truck with license plate readers all the way into the Lafayette area. So, I mean, they come in handy in solving crimes. You're gonna know if there's drug dealers, or if there's people that switch license plates, people undesirables in your neighborhood. So, I mean, if we're gonna start looking at, and I'm not talking about putting a license plate reader on one that's looking at a park, but anything that we put on highways, I think for now and for the future, we need to know who's doing something illegal with these license plates. So you can tell if that license plate comes off of a different car, if the car's stolen, or it was involved in a crime, a murder, whatever. You could follow these vehicles around, and it's a good asset to the police departments. So that's all I got. We need to find out how much more it would cost, and I think there's probably some kind of fee that we'd have to pay monthly or something, to be on that program. Anything, Ms. Candace? You know anything about it?
Give you an idea. So I don't know what the cameras that Captain O'Brien has been purchasing for us, but I do think that it would be a good idea to request that HPD and Sheriff's Office meet and discuss the cameras that are being put up to make sure that they can kind of correlate with each other. I also would suggest, and I'll reach out to her, our grant writer, Leslie Jones, and ask her if she can start looking for some grants for us for this. I'm sure there's something out there about this. But I do think it would be a good idea to make sure that HPD and Sheriff's Office are going to, because Mr. Harding had mentioned there's 2 different cameras that I think we're kind of going after. So we don't want to do one thing that's not going to help with the rest of the parish.
Right, because with this, honey, you can tell who's coming in and out of your parish.
Right.
And it's good crime solver. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Harding?
Yes, I think Officer O'Brien mentioned two different types of cameras, and the sheriff, he's already made a small investment toward the type of camera he has chose. They all work hand in hand. I think within the city, either of the 2 cameras that Officer O'Brien had mentioned to me had different features that were different, and one in particular that he preferred. I don't remember the name of it, but then it has an opportunity, even if you had an area, and there are some cameras, if you want to look at a particular camera, you can actually, from your district, actually look at that particular area. If it's a high crime area, you can actually look at it from your handheld device. We also have some cameras that need extra funding because they haven't supplied any power to it, and there's some circumstances with people that supply energy to Terrebonne Parish, they're having a backlog in being able to supply these cameras. So there's a slight variation between the 2, sheriff and what he desires and how his connection with other sheriff's departments, and then I think within the city, a different type of camera is actually more needed because we're more condensed and being able to actually have the recognition. Other than that, that's basically what we're looking at.
Mr. Babin?
Yeah, I just think we need to make sure that, as Dirk alluded to just a minute ago, we always like to say the 20th century, okay? But we're at an age now that when we put something out there, we wanted to be able to collect information to give back to us. We should not waste our money in things that do not even have any data to them, all right? And so anything that we purchase for the future, if we don't have the money to buy 100 of them if we need it, let's spend the extra money and get 50 and make sure that we're getting something that gives us all the information and gives the law enforcement agencies all the information they need to solve not only that crime, possibly other crimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babin. Ms. Candace, in my conversations with Mr. O'Brien, he himself has been writing grants, so he would have some tips on those that are out there as well. And I can just say, in Mr. Carlee's district at Gray Park, the cameras that were put there saved the district $8,000 for a gate that someone pulled down because they were able to go after the guy and catch the guy and have him pay the restitution. Seeing no more discussion, I will turn it back over to Mr. Harding.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, resolution concurring with the parish administration to award bid number 20-S/P-59 surplus sale for adjudicated property located at 302 Jackson Street to Tremaine White.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Doman, second by Mr. Darren Guidry. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3, resolution concurring with the parish administration to award bid number 21 dash S/P dash 51 surplus sale of adjudicated property located at 545 Polk Street to Janice Zilton. Moved by Mr. Danny Babin, second by Mr. Dirk Gidry. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 4, resolution concurring with the parish administration to award bid number 21-S/P-57 surplus sale of adjudicated property located at 126 Roselawn Avenue to Jane Zilton. Moved by Mr. Amity, second by Miss Domain. That threw me off. Ms. Domain, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. No lights. Number 6, resolution accepting and approving the Louisiana compliance. Number 5? Okay, I circled it already. It really threw me off calling Miss I apologize, Miss Jessica, for calling this. Number 5, concurring with the parish administration to purchase 3 vehicles from Louisiana federal property.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Dirk Gidry, second by Miss Jessica Domain. We have a light, Mr. Gerald Michel.
Is this being done because new vehicles are not available? Is that what's happening? Okay, well, good. All right, thanks.
Any more discussion? Mm-hmm.
So new vehicles, we're having a hard time finding new vehicles, and there is no state contract price anymore because of the inventory shortage and stuff. So a lot of times our vehicles are just purchased on state contract, but now we're having to go through this process.
Any more discussion? All in favor? All right, that was number 5. Number 6, resolution accepting and approving the Louisiana compliance questionnaire as required for the 2021 audited financial report. Moved by Mr. Gerald Michel, second by Mr. Darren Gidry. Any discussion? All in favor? Number 7, item number 7, resolution concurring with the parish administration to award bid 22-plan-18 purchase of 1 new / unused mid-size support utility vehicle from Southland Dodge Chrysler Jeep LLC. Moved by Mr. Babin, second by Mr. Darren Gidry. Any discussion? All in favor? Item number 8, resolution concurring with the parish administration to approve a quote received for the rental of floats for the 2022 Christmas parade. Moved by Mr. Darren Gidry, second by Mr. Amity. Mr. Dirk Gidry. Any discussion? All in favor? Number 9, introducing the ordinance to amend the 2022 adopted operating budget and 5-year capital outlay budget of the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government for the following items and to provide for related matters. 1, La Petite Facility Improvement, $20,000. Homer Police Department LCLE grant, $30,000, and call for public hearing on said matter on Wednesday, June 8, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Moved by Mr. Dirk Gidry, second by Mr. Doman. Any discussion? All in favor? Those are opposed. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Darren Gidry, second by Mr. Doman. All in favor?